If you're not aware, I was involved with a bit of a controversial video about Baldur's Gate 3 causing developers to panic, which I posted over on IGN. Now, I've been working on a larger follow-up that honestly, I don't know if I'm going to post or not at the end of the day. But I stand by what I said in that video. That video was me trying to convey that there are standards that are slipping, and it is very unfortunate to see developers commenting publicly on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, that it's my takeaway from their statements were that they're saying that it's impossible to hit these bars. I referenced a developer, Juno Blees, in that video, who also disagreed with the sentiment being said by many different people in the industry, you know, people from Obsidian, people from Insomniac, and I'm not going to name them anymore because it turned into this whole thing where people were throwing around words like Gamergate and such, because I had a disagreement that I posted publicly about the sentiment espoused in some tweets. So anyway, I stumbled across this video and I wanted to react to it before I make my larger response video to it. This is Laura Fryer's YouTube channel. This was recommended to me randomly. If you don't know who Laura Fryer is, I didn't either. So it's not crazy. She has a very small YouTube channel. She when I watched the video, she had not even 200 subscribers. And I've been sitting on this for about a week. She posted it 3 weeks ago. The video in question only has 9.5 thousand views. When I watched it, like, it didn't have 1,000. So the algorithm is picking it up a bit. Laura Fryer is labeled one of the top 12 most influential women in gaming by Forbes. She was an executive producer at Xbox during the console launch and through the 360 era. She went on to be a GM at Warner Brothers Interactive during their best years. And then she accepted a position as the GM of Epic Games. Finally, I believe she was last on the Oculus team over at Facebook and potentially was laid off. I don't know what her current job is, but you can see she's making some interesting content. It's like why Xbox lost. It's very similar to one of the first videos that I made on this channel. And today we are going to watch her video about Baldur's Gate 3, Quality Wins, and her video is titled Baldur's Gate 3 Broke the Games Industry. Here it is. We're going to watch and react to it.
After 6 years in development, Larian Studios, the makers of Baldur's Gate 3, did the unthinkable. They shipped a completed game with good gameplay for $60. No microtransactions, no additional charges. Just buy the game, play it, and have fun. What?
She gets into it a little bit, but the long and the short of it, a lot of people were saying like, Baldur's Gate 3 isn't perfect. Act 3 falls apart. Yeah, that's fine, but it's about being feature complete. It's not about being perfect. And sometimes people online or having these conversations on forums don't use perfect words. Like I didn't use perfect words in my video. Like I refer to developers in my video and instead of the industry and my challenges with the industry. So I admit that there are things I could have said better, but the reaction to Baldur's Gate 3 being successful was disturbing to a lot of people, Laura included. Let's continue on here.
Were they thinking? The backlash was immediate, as game developers from indie studios as well as Obsidian and Blizzard jumped online to set expectations that this was an anomaly, not the new normal. Instead of celebrating the masterpiece that Larian has created, people jumped online to complain about it. I don't get it.
Here's what's really interesting is she is citing stuff that I did not cite in my video, and yet she's making the same points that I made in my video. So independently, I read this, and this came out 2 weeks after my video came out. So independently, I think she saw the conversations happening online, came to her own conclusions about it. She's citing sources I do not have cited in my video. And it's the anomaly tweet. She's not naming names, but she's referencing big names in the industry that I also didn't mention in my video. So if you go back and look at those original threads, and I'm not saying, but this was like an industry-wide thing where people were talking about how difficult game development is and having their reaction to it. And her reaction is also the same as mine. And I find the reaction to my original video fascinating, to be honest, because at the end of the day, all I'm saying is consumers deserve a product that functions at launch. There are a lot of issues that have been happening more and more that the consumer is being asked to accept, and it is very frustrating. And I stand by that sentiment. Could I have pointed out that Xalvier, who I believe I'm saying his name correctly this time, had other context that I should have highlighted in the video better? Yes. Should I have pointed out that Xalvier also is an independent developer? Yes. It wasn't about him, though. It was about the people at the AAA companies with all the resources available to them reacting the way that they did to the video. In addition to all of that, though, Xalvier is an independent developer, and nobody is expecting an independent development team to develop Baldur's Gate 3. That expectation isn't realistic. Swen Wink also came out after the video. No, before the video came out, he commented on the controversy because it was already a controversy before I made my piece of content on it. And he said the bar is constantly getting raised. Disco Elysium was used as an example as a bar raising thing. So again, like the reaction, I just don't get it. Like I've been covering games for 15 years, mostly celebrating the amazing achievement that companies pull off often. But it's also my job to call out stuff that I don't like about the industry and that the consumer doesn't like. And it's just bizarre to me that I do that, and then the reaction to be, well, you're supposed to explain to the customer why it is the way it is. In my opinion piece, where I'm talking about why I'm also, as a consumer, fed up with some of the deliveries that have been happening, I don't agree with that. I don't agree that it's my responsibility. Yes, I had an opportunity to explain on behalf of the entire development and publishing industry that hey, guess what? We spent $220 million or more on our game, and we have to recoup those. That's why we have to put microtransactions in, and microtransactions exist because consumers keep buying them. Like, I could have gone down that rabbit hole, but when you go back and watch my video, consumers understand the point I was making for the most part. It wasn't straw manning. It was literally me saying there are standards that are slipping. Let's get back to Laura's video because she makes the points for me independently of my video. Anyway.
Why can't quality at launch be the new normal? I just found this entire controversy baffling. Game developers should seek out Larian and try to figure out how they managed to do something so awesome. It's so weird that this controversy was the result of a clearly successful title. But that's what happened. So let's get into it and talk about a few of the main points I saw. I'm going to paraphrase because I don't want to call any specific people out. There were tons of comments all over the place. Whatever, you have your opinions. I don't agree with all of them, but that's cool. Let's talk about what I saw, though.
See, it's there. And people tried to act like I was crazy. It's there for anyone to see that the reaction was this strange pushback against what was accomplished. And that's that, like, look, regardless of the intention of these posts, that's what it looks like to your customers when you're saying that the bar can't be raised and stuff like that. Like, that is the takeaway from people, you know, and you're posting on a public forum. Like, it's bizarre to me that everybody thinks they can just say whatever they want and nobody will have a reaction to it. Yes, I had a reaction to it and I was responding with my reaction, as did the rest of the internet. Like, I'm not saying don't say it, but don't expect people not to react to it. And she's talking about how people had a reaction to it. And it's just so strange to me that people reacted and then people got mad that people reacted. But we do this on social media platforms and then people react and then we're like, whoa, what are you doing? I'm just saying whatever I want. No one's supposed to react to it. Of course people react to it. Anyway, sorry. It was just sort of a weirdness. I might edit this down, but the point I'm trying to make is you're posting on a public forum. People are going to have personal reactions to that content. Anyway.
Three main things. First was that not everyone has the resources to make Baldur's Gate 3. Well, duh.
We all know that. That was such a frustrating talking point that I kept seeing. Of course, not everybody has the resources. Tunic doesn't have the same resources as Larian. The Disco Elysium team doesn't have the same resources as Larian does. It's about having the confidence and hope to create something within your resource limitation that does raise the bar in ways that you're able to. That's all that players want to hear. Like, we're excited about our product. We're really hoping that you like it. And we've really put our heart and soul into this to release it. Like, if that was the sentiment, great. But the sentiment was, we're doomed. And it was very strange. It was very strange from most people's perspective who's not a developer.
Of course they don't. And no one's expecting that. A little tiny indie studio is never going to be able to create Baldur's Gate 3. Everybody gets that. Everybody understands that. That said, there are a lot of teams that should be able to make this kind of high-quality game at release. For example, Blizzard had a huge team and over 6 years to release Diablo 4. However, many people online feel that they fell short on their content compared to BG3. Why? Well, I would argue it's because of their choices. Every game team since forever complains about having limited resources. That's the reality. I've reviewed hundreds of game postmortems, and lack of resources, whether that's money or people, it makes the list every single time.
No one is arguing that a lot of work went into Diablo 4, right? And no one's saying that the Diablo 4 developers are like lazy or, well, okay, I watched the Asmongold video. He kind of said some pretty mean stuff that I did not say. And I feel like that's part of it too, because I saw the Penguins reaction, I saw the Asmongold reaction, and that's not what I said in my video, but I think a lot of that got put on me. But anyway, the point being, the game did fall short from a consumer perspective. The user score is 2.0. And you have to look at that and just not write everybody off as a troll. There's a little bit of truth in the criticism. Just as I'm watching my video and saying, yeah, you know, I could have done better at outlining the fact that Xelvier is an independent developer. I should have said the industry or game studios as opposed to specifically developers. But I was responding in an opinion piece to developers who are posting on a public forum about how it's an anomaly, et cetera, et cetera. So the whole point was just to have a disagreement, not to target anybody, God forbid. I would never, ever want that on anybody. I would never want to do that to anyone. And that's one of my biggest regrets, is that happened. And I really wish that wasn't part of it. But I really want to push back against the narrative that it's impossible to do this, because I had a long conversation at Gamescom with Rami, and we don't see eye to eye on everything, but we do see eye to eye on a few things. Anyway, let's continue on.
Here's my master list that I created from that research. Even Larian talks about their limited resources and choices they had to make. In this GDC talk from 2019, Sven, the founder of Larian, talked about not having enough scripters in Divinity Original Sin.
We had invested quite a bit in increasing the size of our scripting team, because on Original Sin 1, we saw that we were undercapacitated. And so we said, you know what, we have a bit of money, so let's dope ourselves and let's have more scripters than we're going to need.
Then he goes on to say that when they made version 2, they added more. They learned from their previous version and tried to fix the problem. Tried. He also said that it didn't actually work and they could have used more people. Developers will never have enough resources to do everything they want. Look, game developers are really ambitious, and that's a great thing. They're never satisfied with what they have, and they want more.
That I agree with. Like, game developers who really care about their craft, they're very ambitious. They want to give you the world, right? And it's when the customer sees, oh, well, we can't do it, that's disheartening for us to hear, when what we're seeing is what I outlined in that video. You know, these remasters that aren't really remasters, or they're like just like not up to the standard bar. These day one releases, the template apology letters, it's like, that's what we see. And then when we see people at great companies that honestly, a lot of the companies that are commenting on that thread don't have that problem. So it was strange. Anyway.
But even the biggest games have to make choices about what they can ship and what they have to cut.
Yeah.
That's the reality. The problem is knowing what and how much to cut, and that's hard to figure out sometimes. It's different for every developer because it depends on their unique team, their game, and their set of constraints. This is what I personally love about making games. It's really hard. It's a series of trade-offs on the triangle. It reminds me of this scene from Apollo.
Yeah, on this triangle, like if you're talking about my videos, I don't have a lot of time. I don't have a lot of quality, and I have a pretty good setup, so I guess I've invested in that. Yeah, I don't know. So I'm like maybe here-ish on the where do my videos fall on this? Anyway.
It reminds me of this scene from Apollo 13. If they didn't fix the air filters, the astronauts were going to die.
We gotta find a way to make this fit into the hole for this, using nothing but that.
Game development. I love this reference. Like, this video is so great. Like, I know her editing's like, it needs a little bit of work, but I love this video. It's so cool to see somebody with as much experience as she has talking about these things. I love this stuff. This is great. It's inspiring.
Okay, let's build a filter. Better get some coffee going too, someone.
Which brings us to our second discussion point. People complaining about how things are different now, how you're setting new standards we're going to have to meet, how making games is really hard and we're not going to be able to do that. Look, it's true. Making a game is one of the most difficult pieces of software that you can ship. Making a game is not for the faint of heart, and life as a game developer can be exceedingly frustrating sometimes.
I absolutely get that. Like, you have this voracious fan base. Like, just looking online on Twitter or being a gamer, you probably have an idea what you're about to get into if you're going into game development. So you should have that. You definitely have to have that understanding and that perspective and be ready for it, because people really care about what you're creating too much sometimes. I had to step away for a second. Let me get caught up.
Game is not for the faint of heart, and life as a game developer can be exceedingly frustrating sometimes. Many things have changed, but I'd argue that the same principles that worked in the past work now. I've been making games since the 90s. The technology and platforms have evolved, but that's been the case forever. It's always been one of the factors you have to deal with as a studio. Welcome to game development. When you live on the edge of innovation, you are going to have to deal with new technology every single year. Whether it was transitioning from 2D to 3D, now VR and AR, modems to broadband, PC to consoles to iPads to mobile phones. Every single year, there is something new that you have to worry about. At the same time, some things have gotten better.
Yeah, so like, that's the thing that I don't understand. And again, I find this video super inspirational. I like, Laura sounds like a great leader, honestly. And I love her mindset and everything that I'm seeing in this piece of content. Yeah, you're on the edge of innovation, but that also means you get cool new toys to mess around with and maybe make something cooler that you didn't expect before. Look at the recent Unreal Engine update and the tools that are going to be available on the dev side. That has me excited as a consumer, seeing, oh, wow, look what they're going to be able to do. So it's sort of a double-edged sword. Yes, you got to keep up, but you also get a few interesting things or interesting opportunities if you look at it that way.
For example, you no longer have to build your own game engine.
Yeah.
Building an engine is tough, and building the tools to support it doubly so. Luckily, today
Unity,
you can use...
Yeah, Unity, not the greatest example today. But I'll rewind a little bit because Unity is basically done, but Epic is still there. You know, there's, what is it? Something dot that people are probably going to replace Unity with. Let's continue.
Some things have gotten better. For example, you no longer have to build your own game engine. Building an engine is tough, and building the tools to support it doubly so. Luckily, today you can use an engine made by another team. Epic has been making Unreal available for developers since 1998.
Unreal is crazy. It's crazy what they've been able to accomplish. She worked at Epic, and they just had a huge update. I believe the way that they work, you get the whole engine for free. You don't have to make a game engine, but I think they get a 5% cut of something. I'm not clear on that. I'm going to make a whole separate video about that topic, but the engine's basically free, sort of. Free asterisks, right? Anyway, let's continue.
And they've had some of the best programmers in the world iterating on it for years. It's hard to compete with that, and now you don't have to. As another example, Steam makes it easy for you to ship your game out in early access and get feedback so you can...
And so there's early access opportunities. And a lot of people pointed that out about my original video, actually. Well, Baldur's Gate was in early access for 3 years. I see that as a smart play on Larian's part. Hey, we're going to release an early access. And if you want to support us, you can for $60. And then you get the game for free when it comes out. And I had apparently either purchased the game and already had it available on my Steam account, because when they sent through codes to press, I already had it. So I'd already bought it at some point. I forgot because it was in early access for 3 years. Leveraging that new opportunity is great. And sometimes games come out in early access and they're really bad and they don't improve markedly enough from the feedback loop. And unfortunately, that's like, I have a cookie business as an example, right? I make cookies. I'm happy with the very small amount of profit that I make selling cookies. I'm not trying to be Nabisco. I'm not trying to be Oreo, but like, we take a lot of pride in our cookie, LeGaryBakery.com, by the way. So I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with the early access analogy, but again, I see it as an opportunity, not a detriment, that you can get this data from your player base and then have a relaunch. Anyway.
Can improve the gameplay and fix bugs before you launch. Steam didn't exist back in the day when we shipped the Internet Gaming Zone.
Yeah.
Steam didn't come along until 2005, and they crushed us. That was Microsoft giving up on PC gaming to focus on Xbox and Xbox Live. Even Microsoft had to make choices about their resources. Making games at the base level is about making trade-offs.
Yep.
Fundamentally, it's about balancing the triangle of cost, quality, and time. The platforms, the engine, the regions you localize for, these are features. They're features that you're choosing based on that triangle. For example, notice that Baldur's Gate 3 is not shipping at the same time on every platform.
Baldur's Gate 3, I think the video I want to make is Baldur's Gate 3 broke all the rules and they won for it. Like early access, a lot of people don't see as a great thing. You know, like Ark was in early access for a long time, but that game was hugely popular. Fortnite was in early access. PUBG was in early access. You know, like, look, your game can be successful and still be in that early access period. And what was the other thing she said there?
They're features that you're choosing based on that triangle. Yeah. For example, notice that Baldur's Gate 3 is not shipping at the...
Oh, yeah. So they didn't ship day and date on PlayStation 5. I think the PlayStation 5 version just came out not that long ago. And the Xbox version is still slated for 2023. So that's coming right around the corner. It's really exciting, and it's a smart play on their part.
The same time on every platform.
But most companies don't do that. Most companies are like, well, we have to release everything the same day, except for like some of these games that are delaying their Switch ports. We recently had the problematic Mortal Kombat 1 launch on Switch, which should have been delayed. Like, stop forcing everything to be day and date. And I think that one is on the publisher more than anything, forcing a release window there. Like, publishers need to lighten up with that stuff. It just doesn't need to be that way. Your Switch sales are still going to be there.
Platform. It's first released on PC, followed by PlayStation 5, and hopefully on Xbox soon. Larian had to make the trade-off to ship PC first, and it was a brilliant move. They wanted to get ahead of all of the releases that were coming out for fall, including Starfield.
Good.
When I worked on the Xbox, we would make sure that every developer was aware of the big launches so that they could move their ship dates out of the way. It just made sense so that the games didn't cannibalize each other's sales on our own platform. I'm sure that Larian would have loved to have waited and shipped everything at the same time, but they couldn't. In fact, they don't even have it working properly on Xbox yet. As an Xbox founder, this really breaks my heart. The entire idea behind the original Xbox is that it was going to be really easy to develop for, and it was, because it was kind of just a PC. It even had a hard drive. Ease of development.
Yeah, you know, it's really funny that she brings that up, because Baldur's Gate 3 is coming to Xbox last, and she's like, how did that happen? Like, that's another video to dive into. Why is the Xbox Series X and S making it more difficult to release these games day and day? Like, what is it? Is it a policy? Is it the parity policy? It's definitely an interesting question she poses.
Development was one of the key advantages Xbox had over the PlayStation, but sadly things have changed, and that's no longer the case. What Larian has done extremely well is manage their trade-offs. They've learned from their mistakes, and they keep learning. As far as setting new standards, games do that all the time.
Yeah.
I think the head of Larian Studios...
She has the quote in there. Swen Wink says, Swen Wink on why devs shouldn't worry about Baldur's Gate 3 and do their own thing. Standards change continuously. Like the idea that there's some elevated standard. No, the standard's pretty straightforward. Launch a game in a stable state, right? That's it. And like for me, I hate microtransactions. I can't think of the last microtransaction I bought. Like, so several years ago was probably the last one. But I understand why they exist from a business perspective because people do keep buying them. But anyway, let's continue on.
Studios put it well when he said the following. But I'm a big fan of Into the Breach. That's a standard for me. So you've got a whole bunch of standards out there. The only game that exists in the universe for my youngest son is Minecraft. That's a standard for him. The last issue of contention was around quality. And again, I'm going to paraphrase, but it was basically, gamers, let's not expect quality at launch. We're not doing that. Okay.
Yeah. Regardless of how you were trying to phrase it, that's the takeaway when you make statements about the quality. And Baldur's Gate 3 wasn't that good. So on the one hand, you have people saying that, oh, we can't match that standard of quality. But then you also have the same sentiment being exposed like, oh, it actually was really bad. So which was it? It was really bad. So it should be easier, right? Like I don't get the push and pull there. Gamers clearly liked Baldur's Gate 3 a lot. And it wasn't perfect because they're not looking for perfection. They just want a really good gameplay experience and a feature complete experience, not a perfect experience. And she has Redfall and Gollum up there. Like, how does this happen? Right? Question I'll have to dive into.
Okay. I'm a little confused. It used to be a standard to test your game and fix as many bugs as possible before release. That used to be normal. All games have bugs, but not to the extent we're seeing now.
Thank you. And it's across the board. It's not like it's like I'm calling somebody out. It's a lot of games are doing it. We just saw Mortal Kombat 1. She's referencing Pokemon. There was another Pokemon release recently that was buggy. There's all these performance issues across the board, and you couldn't get away with that back in the day. When the original Dark Souls came out and the Undead Burg was a disaster, that became like a meme, but that game was still beloved, right? But we all knew that section was rough. So there's always been issues, but not like we're seeing today because everybody is relying on day one patches to fix everything. They got to stop. Like the publishers are just saying, well, we'll push it out and we'll do a day zero patch or a day one patch. And I do not like those patches. Anyway.
See, when games were shipped in a box, you had to get as many bugs out as possible because you couldn't just update it.
Yep.
You had to actually print new media and send it out in order to fix a bug. That's expensive, and so you couldn't do it. So you really had to hunt down the most important.
It is expensive, and the expense now is being passed on the consumers with our time, and that is not how it should be. Period. There's no getting around that. If you make my food and there is hair all up in there, I don't want that food, and you're gonna have to make it again, right? So like, stop. It's the idea of asking the customer to accept a plate of food with hair in it, right? That's gross. Just fix it before you charge them $70 for it.
Bugs and get them fixed before you released. It wasn't optional. If you shipped a poor quality game, you lost. You didn't make back your money.
If you shipped a poor quality game, you lost. And the reaction to consumers being frustrated by the state of the products that are being launched is baffling to me. They're expressing a frustration about poor quality products. And several examples pop into everybody's mind when I say that on the consumer side, and we just deflect from that. It should be a conversation we're having, not something we're burying our head in the sand about. There's a reason that there is a meme about apology letters on Twitter/X right now. And it's not because they're making it up. It's because it's happening too much. Why? Profit margins, publishers, developers. I don't know the answer to that. I think it's more nuanced than pointing fingers at any part of it, but it's happening.
Money and your studio closed. With broadband being the standard now and the addition of a hard drive to Xbox, that has changed. This should have been a positive thing. This is what we envisioned for the Xbox, that, boy, sometimes you miss a bug and it would be really great to be able to update or add new content, and then people could just download it instead of buying physical media. This was going to be a good thing for gamers. Instead, it's ended up being this abused feature of the...
The way she says it is so perfect. It is an abused feature of modern, she says Xbox, but modern consoles, modern platforms. And it's not right. It's just not. Period.
The Xbox. Problems get pushed to the first update and not fixed for launch. One of the tools that Larian used to hit quality at launch was early access. This is something every game developer can take advantage of. Developers can put out an early version and start getting feedback and finding bugs that might not get covered by a test team. Making a role-playing game and testing all of the edge cases is an enormous task, and you need all the help you can get. By releasing early, Larian was not only able to test the game, it also helped them to build up their fan base and fund their development. For fans, that's a great deal. If they want to go on the journey with the team and they see this as an exciting option, more power to them. For people that want to wait for the polished version at launch, that don't want to live through those bugs and all the broken systems and all the feedback and changes, no problem. Wait.
If you're putting all your chips on the line, right? Why wouldn't you do it with an early access period? At least then you know how much of a backing you have and whether or not your idea is as good as you believe it to, right? Because part of your craft is creating a piece of art. So if you launch an early access and the response is just not what, there's like no positive to take from it, it's an opportunity to go back to the drawing board. Imagine if No Man's Sky wasn't marketed as a full release game that's going to be perfect at launch, like the way that it was handled, right? Imagine it was launched as an early access game. I think a lot of the heat that was put on Sean Murray and Hello Games would have been lifted because there was already a tremendous amount of hype around it. And look at the comeback story that we talk about with No Man's Sky as an example, right? Sure, there's plenty of others that have launched and failed, but that's just any business. There's a lot of people out there making burritos, right? And Chipotle is very successful, but there's others that are less successful. And that's just the nature of any business. It's lunchtime. I'm hungry. Sorry. Dinner time, I mean. Anyway.
Until launch. The big difference here is the expectation. If I'm buying a finished game, I expect it to work.
Yep.
In my opinion, having a quality game at launch should be the standard. It used to work. It'll still work. Gamers want it. Let's do it.
That's all they're asking for. Their games to work at launch. It's not a controversial take. Products are coming out and they don't work. Period. That's what's happening. They don't work properly. I don't know what else to say.
I think game developers should be thanking Larian for showing that gamers don't have to settle. That quality is appreciated.
They don't, and they won't.
It's desired. Developers, use Baldur's Gate 3 as your cudgel to get your...
Use Baldur's Gate 3 as your cudgel, because you can say now, look what they did. We need this much more time to make sure these bugs are fixed. We do not want to be a meme. We don't want to be made fun of for this major problem that needs to be addressed in a day zero patch. Anyway.
Decision makers to see that quality still matters to consumers.
It really
The more
does.
I've looked into Larian Studios, the more impressed I am with what they've accomplished. Not only have they made a great game, they approached the game with care for the fans. And not only were they true to the video game versions, but also the board game, because it's based on Dungeons and Dragons, which I was a big fan of when I was a teen.
Nerd.
When I
Just
worked
kidding.
at WB Games, we had to thread the needle. between creating something new and staying true to the original fans. It's not easy, but that's why I love working in games, because it's endlessly challenging. I'm still finding it really odd that the games industry is upset about Baldur's Gate 3. They should be excited that the bar has been raised, and they should fight to meet it.
I will say that one of the big pushbacks in my videos, like, we're not upset about Baldur's Gate 3, but there were people that were upset. And there were a lot of people in the AAA space backing up that sentiment, talking about how it's an anomaly and all this other stuff. And the pushback was about that sentiment. Look, if you're celebrating Baldur's Gate 3 and you're on the dev side and you're playing it a ton and you're talking about it a ton and talking about how great it is, that's awesome. What's really disheartening to hear from a consumer perspective, though, is that no way that could ever be made. I think in time, you'll see that it is possible. Like, it's just not true, because Larian just did it, right? And it's not about matching what they did, because at the same time, it's not a perfect game. No Man's Sky wasn't a perfect game at launch either, but there's ways that No Man's Sky could have handled that launch better. I would hope that the industry learns from what they did. I would hope that they learn from what Larian did, and maybe I'm foolish.
Not complain about it online. They should be asking, no, begging Larian to share their secrets of success. Yeah. Most importantly, at least from my position, is they should be trying to figure out how they scaled that work across multiple studios. That is always a challenge, and I'd love to hear a postmortem about that. I salute Larian, the studio that made Baldur's Gate 3. They've proven that you can create a great game that your audience loves, even in today's environment. I celebrate their efforts, and I hope you will too. And thank you for showing gamers that they don't have to settle.
It's a great video. Please go watch it. She deserves way more subscribers. She has some interesting pieces about meta and everything, but I wanted to share that video with you and react to it because it spoke to me in a unique way, because I got a lot of heat, a lot of blocks, a lot of people that don't like me anymore because of my Baldur's Gate 3 take. But on the consumer side, it seems almost unanimous that people understood where I was coming from. Maybe I'll make a larger thing about all the people that I've talked to and everything, but a lot of people agreed with me. Not just on the gamer side. A lot of people privately reached out on the publication side and on the development side to agree with me, to point out some of the things that I got wrong. And, you know, I can admit that I made a few mistakes. Xalvier's an indie dev, you know, don't publicly post the names of people, because unfortunately there's a lot of crazies out there. And I mean, I don't want to tell you what to do, but if you're posting on a public forum, people are going to disagree with you. I know that. I know that very well as a fan of Xbox, that people don't like it when I push against the narrative, regardless of what it is, right? Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. Let me know what you think about the video. Let me know what you think about this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much to the members for joining me and helping support this channel. I really got to get out of here, but check out this video where we talk about the Xbox leak. I'm going to get out of here. I'll see you for the next one. Go subscribe to Laura Fryer. Great video. Asmongold, if you end up seeing this, or anybody's a fan of Asmongold, send him that thing. I feel like the time has passed on the topic, but it's really interesting to see somebody with that much experience talk about it. And Penguins too. Moist Critical, is that his name? I'm learning all this stuff. Anyway, bye for now, everybody.